Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
It's Brian O'Neill in for Kevin Doran, and on today on the line with Dr. Christian Kopff, University of Colorado in Boulder. Dr. Kopff, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Dr. Kopff, well, everybody's been talking about the President's State of the Union speech. What was your thoughts from watching that on Tuesday night?
Well, as a rhetorical, it's primarily a speech, so it's a work of rhetoric, and it was an amazing juxtaposition or combination of an extremely genial, friendly, and relaxed style combined with a very aggressive and defiant content.
That's an interesting way of putting it. One thing that he said was he gave a list of things that he was going to veto if it came up.
These policies will continue to work as long as politics don't get in the way. We can't slow down businesses or put our economy at risk with government shutdowns or fiscal showdowns. We can't put the security of families at risk by taking away their health insurance or unraveling the new rules on Wall Street, or refighting past battles on immigration when we've got to fix a broken system. And if a bill comes to my desk that tries to do any of these things, I will veto it. It will have earned my veto.
Health insurance and immigration were the two big things I heard there. Your thoughts, Dr. Kopff?
Yes, well, he still continues to have a my way or the highway attitude toward the whole point is that he has concerns, and the Republican majority in both houses, which he's been so essential in creating, have concerns. And what you then do is, as Ronald Reagan used to do with Tip O'Neill, you get together and you get some of the things you want while losing some, and the other side gets some of the things they want while losing some. And he comes there and says that any attempt to do anything I don't want, I will veto. And then he says at the end of the speech, of course, and now, why don't we all work together? Well, working together has to mean that both sides compromise. And that's what we're not hearing from the president.
You know, he's pushing this community college plan where apparently they take the money from investments that the wealthy make and give money that doesn't have to be paid back for community college educations. Here's one statement that he made about education. He's talking about both high school and college here.
We believed we could prepare our kids for a more competitive world. And today, our younger students have earned the highest math and reading scores on record. Our high school graduation rate has hit an all-time high. More Americans finish college than ever before.
Now, Dr. Kopff, you would be more up on the education statistics than I would. Your thoughts on what Obama said there?
Well, the statistics go both ways. I certainly think America has a great educational system, and we're educating a lot of people. The problem is that there are certain groups that have a very large graduation level, and there are certain groups that lose half their kids before they get out of high school. And community college won't do anything for kids who didn't get through high school. Secondly, many people, and here I'm not sure the exact statistics, who go to community college have Pell Grants and other federal support already. Right now, the president mentioned very accurately that Tennessee has a program for giving free community college, and the city of Chicago has a program. The whole point of the states as the laboratories of democracy is you give it a chance to see how it works. Now, what he's doing is, before we've had a chance to see how it works in Tennessee and Chicago, he wants to make it nationwide. And this is a bad idea on principle. Secondly, his scheme as so far presented is somewhat vague. It isn't clear how it relates to the Pell Grants. It looks like after the Pell Grant money is gone, it's going to be 75% federal and 25% states. Some states will have no problem meeting that burden. I bet New York won't. But there are other poorer states that won't be able to meet the burden. And this is the problem of one size fits all, which is sort of the the motto of the Obama administration of trying to nationalize every issue instead of letting our federal system work so we can test out ideas on the state level, or in the case of Chicago, a very large city, and see how it works before we try to spread it, which we ought to do state by state, across the country.
Dr. Kopff, what about the Robin Hood part of the idea of skimming off the top of the wealthy's investments to pay for other people's community college, which they don't have to pay back for?
Yeah, the problem is, as everyone knows, there's an ethical issue here and there's a financial issue. And unfortunately, the financial issue is simply that rich people are not only smart themselves, they have smart lawyers and manage to find a way out of the whatever clever ideas the government comes up with. But the other side is you value things you pay for. There's a butterfly effect. The butterfly needs to fight its way out of the cocoon. People need to earn their degree. You can't make it impossibly hard. That, of course, is true. And there are a lot of ways to borrow money to get through college. In fact, one of the big arguments is how much kids owe when they graduate from college. But making community college free won't necessarily make it better. It doesn't cost a lot now in most states. There are Pell Grants for poor people. There are all kinds of reasons why we want people to pay something for an event. I know we often have events here on campus, and when it matters to us, we'll often charge $1 or something just so that people, have some skin in the game. And the president really doesn't understand this about either teaching or anything else. So in my opinion, I'm willing to learn from the example of Tennessee and Chicago when they've been able to work on this long enough. But right now, I think there are problems that should be thought about before we rush into nationalizing a idea which hasn't even been adequately tested on the state level.
Is there a little redundancy here legislatively with, some laws that are already in the books as far as getting grants to go to college? Do you think the president, in your view, is doing something that's already been done?
One of the objections to the speech as a whole is that it seemed to be a kind of retread of earlier speeches of his without any really new idea. One of the things that happened early in the Obama administration when he had control of both houses of the legislature, which he has since lost, was to nationalize completely the college funding. A great deal of it used to be done through local banks and things like that with government support. And now everything comes from the government. And yes, he's already done this. We've already tried this. It's only been a few years since he's done it, so we haven't really been able to see the effect of it so far. There's therefore been both good and bad signs. Yeah, one hates to say it exactly this way, but it's the same old, same old. He seems to be, a lot of people attending community college do get Pell Grants and other support, and in Tennessee and Chicago, it's already free. So exactly who is being advantaged by it? And secondly, it isn't at all clear that it isn't to people's advantage to pay for some of what they get. And in fact, on the contrary, there's a lot of psychological evidence that you value more things you pay for. And this is something the president can't understand. He just seems to think that giving people things works well. It doesn't work well. It works poorly. By the way, this won't do anything for all the kids that drop out of high school, and that includes large numbers of black and Hispanic kids.
Talking with Dr. Christian Kopff here on the Newsmaker Show. One name that came up in the president's State of the Union speech, I get a kick out of it because when you get emails from government officials and they tell you the reaction, it's all in initials. So instead of saying President Obama, they say POTUS, which stands for President of the United States, POUTS. And then the reaction to the speech is not referred to this as the State of the Union. It's called the SOTU, SOTO. So you get all these emails from the big officials, and they tell you that this, that, or the other thing about the POTUS SOTO. We're talking with Dr. Christian Kopff. When we get back, we'll continue our conversation here on the Newsmaker Show. Stay with us. Back on the Newsmaker Show, Brian O'Neill filling in for Kevin Doran, on with our regular Thursday guest, Dr. Christian Kopff. Dr. Kopff, one thing that came out of the speech, Cuba and Iran. Wanted to get your thoughts on what the president said there.
Well, the president talked almost not at all about foreign affairs. Everyone noted for the first time since 2002 the words Al-Qaeda did not appear. There are a lot of problems in the world, and his foreign policy is plausibly presented as imploding. Instead, he emphasized the fact that he's going great guns with Iran, and they're not going to go forward and create nuclear warheads. And if the Republicans try to put any pressure on them by sanctions, he will veto it. It's one of the numerous vetoes that he threatened. He also boasted about support for the Cuban dictatorship. The fact is, with the problems with oil, with the halving of oil prices, and he did boast about taking credit for that, although it was almost certainly Saudi Arabia, not the President of the United States. He knows that Russia is in less good shape. They've lost half their income virtually, which means they can no longer support Cuba. And just when they can no longer support Cuba and pressure might be put on Cuba to modify or even end the dictatorship, he and the Bishop of Rome come in and rescue the Cuban dictatorship. And he presents this as a wonderful thing.
Speaking of Pope Francis, Pope Francis was mentioned last night during the speech. Your thoughts on that?
Well, he wants to show people on his side. He did it in a very careful way. He didn't attribute to the Bishop of Rome the rescue of the Cuban dictatorship, because he wants credit for that. But he juxtaposed to his reference to Cuba was the Pope Francis saying that politics is done by small steps, and so we're going to go step by step in supporting the Cuban dictatorship, not just rush in. But that reminded us that he and Pope Francis were the two world leaders who negotiated a new relationship with Cuba. He also called for the ending of the embargo, but that has to be passed by Congress, and it's not likely that is going to happen. Cuban Americans certainly have been rather disgusted at the rescue of the dictatorship at a time when we might have put pressure on them to make things better for the people of Cuba.
Did you notice that he didn't mention the Pope's breeding like rabbits statement?
No, he did not. That is, by the way, that's a great statement. And I hope I won't be misinterpreted there, but I grew up, in New York State a generation ago, and that's, of course, the way some, not and many, but some embittered Protestants would speak about Catholics way back then.
The baby machine jokes.
Rome using that expression.
You're referring to the baby machine jokes.
Yes, that's right. Back, especially the 50s and 60s. I mean, it hasn't been true for a generation, but back then, this was not uncommon to hear this kind of talk. In fact, about 20 years ago, I was talking to some Catholic friends, and they started making fun of Mormons for having so many babies. And I thought to myself, I feel sort of embarrassed, because this is the way my parents' friends used to talk about them. Now we've got to the stage where Catholics and Protestants get together and make fun of Mormons.
Pope Francis is interesting from a media viewpoint, because I guess it's sort of an interesting phenomenon. He makes these statements, and liberal reporters interpret it their way. The conservatives come back and say, well, he didn't quite say this, he meant that. I saw one conservative Catholic blog site that said he didn't use the phrase breeding like rabbits, but he did use the phrase like rabbits, and you know what the intent was. It seems that as more time goes by, though, the Pope is sort of disillusioning some on the conservative or traditional Catholics are not pleased with the Pope.
No, it's getting increasingly hard to interpret what he's doing as a positive attitude toward the traditions of the Church. He's certainly not going to turn everything on its head overnight. Secondly, there's some reason to think that he likes publicity and thinks that it's good for the Church, to have publicity, and he may be right about that. But he has certainly discouraged people who are really the heart of the Christian enterprise in general, and the Catholic enterprise in particular. The traditionalists, they're the ones who show up, they're the ones who donate the most. They don't make the most noise necessarily, but they are certainly, when you discourage them, you're discouraging your base. And one thing that the Pope could learn from Obama is it's better to have an enthusiastic base and alienate a few peripheral people than the opposite.
Do you think that there are sometimes the similarities between popes and presidents? I mean, you see an alliance between Reagan and John Paul II. I think there was somewhat of an alliance in the 30s and 40s there between Roosevelt and Pius XII.
Yes, I think that we are aware of the fact that even though Stalin made the famous crack at the Pope, how many divisions does the Pope have, that in fact there's a considerable moral force there, and Roosevelt was able to connect with it, as well as using, the popes that shut down Father Coughlin, more or less. And President Reagan, who's a strong Protestant, worked very hard to work with the Bishop of Rome to set up an official American embassy to the Vatican and do a whole set of things which certainly hurt communism, especially in Poland, which already was a country where communism was in shaky status. There's no one thing caused the fall of the Soviet Union, but one of the factors was the fact that the President of the United States and the Bishop of Rome could work together and, present on many ethical and political issues a common front.
Well, I was kind of surprised. I was talking to a conservative Catholic friend of mine, and he didn't have any problems with the Pope's view on Cuba. He says if the United States is doing business with the Vietnamese and the Chinese, what's wrong with recognizing Cuba?
Yes, well, again, all politics is concrete and specific, and the answer is there's not much we can do about Vietnam, and there is something we can do about an island 90 miles outside our shores. And if you can't tell the difference between the other side of the world and 90 miles away from Florida, I don't think much of his geopolitical acumen.
Talking with Dr. Christian Kopff. Any other topics you wanted to bring up?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that there are especially. It'll be interesting from the point of view of those of us who teach in regular 4-year colleges and universities, which depend upon tuition, what the effect of making community college even cheaper. It's already cheaper than we are. There are plenty of kids who go and do their first 2 years of community college and then transfer. And I just wonder what the effect on schools. The University of Colorado is in very good financial shape, but many schools are, they're betwixt and between. And it's not clear to me that the unintended consequences at the 4-year colleges to a free community college system would not be overall bad, even though the strongest schools would still not be affected.
Dr. Kopff, I did have one additional question. Did you have any thoughts on the success of the big movie there, The American Sniper?
I think it's really impressive that at a time of the year when Americans are not supposed to go to the movies in January, Americans spent over $100 million to see what is frankly a rather serious movie. It shows a person who's brave and hardworking, but also there are serious ethical ramifications to the work that he does. And that so many Americans wanted to see this is really impressive about the maturity of the movie audiences. And the reaction to it by our intellectual elite was childish. It was treating it like it was a documentary when it's a portrayal of the tragedy of doing what you have to do to, get anything done. Protect your country, protect your family, whatever, and the losses that come from it. It's a very mature movie. And that so many Americans wanted to see it really says something very good about the ordinary American movie-going audience, which is usually portrayed as simply, silly teenage boys and silly teenage girls. It's not true. There's still an audience for a serious movie.
What about the whole Audie Murphy thing? That's what I thought of as soon as I heard Sean Hannity describing the movie. Does this the main character in The American Sniper kind of remind you of the Audie Murphy World War II hero?
It reminds me more of Sergeant York, which was this great Gary Cooper movie, which was a guy who was Alvin York was originally a pacifist. He gets drafted and is determined he should obey the government, and he's a great shooter. And he eventually captures a whole German brigade by shooting cleverly. By the way, he's also sniping, quite frankly. And the whole, trauma of war is not a good thing. But when you when your country is in a war, what does a moral person do? And that really is what the Clint Eastwood movie is also about. I would think seeing the Gary Cooper Sergeant York and Clint Eastwood's American Sniper would be very interesting to see these very important themes. What does it take? Granted that war is not good, and granted that war has a bad effect. Granted that. Are there times when that is the right thing to do? And that's what both movies raise in a very interesting and mature way.
Dr. Kopff, always good talking with you.
It's great to talk to you.
ABC is next here on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.